a crocheter who's only been selling their work for a little over a year now, I've gotten my fair share of snarky comments in real life and online letting me know just how expensive or overpriced they think my work is. So let's talk about why crochet items are quote-unquote overpriced and why you shouldn't say that to a crocheter or any artist. This is an epidemic that I've seen many other crocheters experience too when sharing what it's like to do markets selling their work and the unhinged, degrading things that customers say to them. And of course, that's not to discourage others from doing markets, but there's always at least one person who decides to share opinions that should have stayed inside thoughts. Everything from incredulity, such as, wow, you charge blank amount of money for this, to huffing and puffing when they try and talk you down from your prices and you don't budge. In my opinion, it all comes from such a weird sense of entitlement in a way because they expect you to change your prices to what they want to pay with complete disregard for your art's value. They see a small handmade plush for $8 to $10 and think that's outrageous when they don't consider anything that went into making it. They just see the finished product and nothing more. Handmade items are practically never going to be dirt cheap like they expect them to be. And it all stems from a lot of these people not having appreciation for the process of creating handmade items in the first place. It's a really ignorant mindset to have that results in a lot of comments that should have just been kept to yourself. Of course, if you don't crochet, I don't expect you to know everything there is to know about it, but you at least have to understand that I make everything by hand and I deserve to be paid fairly. If you don't know the time, skill, or cost of materials it takes to make something completely handmade, then you honestly don't have a leg to stand on and you don't need to be commenting on its price. Like, I'm sorry, that might sound a little harsh, but it's true. It's extremely rude to devalue any artist's work, whether it's crochet, a painting, pottery, anything like that. If an artist took the time to sit down and make something with their own two hands and you think it's too expensive, by all means, you don't have to buy it. I've never understood why some people just get so offended at my pricing when I've tried my best to make it affordable but also have its price reflect the cost of materials and the time it takes to crochet them. At my markets, there's always one or two people who argue right in front of me whether they can justify buying something or make some sort of backhanded comment under their breath about the price. And there's also people who will say to me or to their friends, I don't need to buy this, I can just make it myself. Again, by all means, have at it. I'm certainly not the only crocheter in the world, but if you think you can just make it yourself, you don't have to say so right in front of me. It's just very insensitive to an artist trying to make a living from their art. Another situation I frequently end up in is where a child wants one of my plushies, they start throwing a tantrum because their mom said no, and she drags them off with some comment about how overpriced they are. Like, yeah, I understand your kid throwing a fit in public is probably kind of embarrassing, but you don't have to take that frustration out on me. The right way to handle it would be, hey, I'm really sorry, but we can't get one of these today, maybe for Christmas. Plenty of parents have said something like that to politely redirect their child away from my table without putting down my work in the process. It's totally okay to not want to buy something, and I will never be upset at people that come browse my items and then leave. But if you think something handmade is too expensive, just keep it to yourself. It's truly that easy. You are not entitled to an artist lowering their prices for you just because you think it's too expensive. If you can't afford to pay an artist for their hard work, if you don't think the price is worth it, if you think you can make it yourself, you don't have to buy it from them. Some people behave like I've chained them to my table and told them they can't leave until they buy something when it's so easy to just move on if you don't want to spend the money. Telling an artist that their work is overpriced is really insulting because it belittles all of the effort and skill they've dedicated to learn how to make these things. Only they can decide what their hard work is worth. And honestly, if you don't see the value in a handmade craft like crochet, you probably don't deserve to own it in the first place. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like customers are so outraged at prices because they just see the item itself and not the work that went into it, so they compare those prices to something that they can buy at the store. A factory-made blanket from the store is definitely going to be cheaper than a crocheted one because they're not comparable items. One was mass-produced by a company and the other was completely handmade. And that's the issue. So many people want handmade items but don't want to compensate crocheters fairly and pay what the piece is actually worth. They expect to pay $10 to $20 for a blanket when that probably wouldn't even cover the cost of the yarn, just because they think it's in the same price point as mass-produced goods. In reality, a crocheter would be well within their rights to sell a blanket for $100+ because of how long they take to make and how much yarn they require. So yeah, not everyone has the money to spend on that, but don't expect the artist to change the price because of your own biases against handmade goods. I feel like some people will also just take this video the wrong way and look at it through the lens of you don't care about your customers or their feedback. And that is simply not true. I have an overwhelming appreciation for all the people who directly support me and like my work enough to buy it. and I will gladly accept constructive feedback, like ideas I could implement into my crochet to make it better, or even suggestions for things I could make in the future. But I will not make changes to my pricing. You have to understand that artists don't just price their pieces randomly, and there's a lot of research and care put into determining the cost. If you have no experience or qualifications running a business and know nothing about crochet, I think it's fair to not take complaints about prices too seriously. I'm not some rich, greedy corporation, I'm just a crocheter who occasionally sells things at markets and wants to be paid fairly. It shouldn't be so controversial for artists that sell handmade items to want proper compensation for their time and skills. There are always going to be people that for some reason expect to be able to purchase crochet items that took many hours and/or use expensive materials for next to nothing. But at the end of the day, only the artist knows how much their work is worth because they're the one who made it. If the price of that work upsets you, simply don't buy it. As I've said before in many of my videos, people are way too comfortable sharing their outright rude opinions about your work when there's no need to say it at all. If you're that upset about the price of a crochet plush and you want to complain about it to your friends, go right ahead. But you don't need to do it right in front of me where I can clearly hear you. And if you can't appreciate an artist's work, consider that they probably don't want your money anyway. If you crochet or sell your art at markets, have you ever experienced this? If you have, let me know some crazy things that customers have said to you. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!